The unification of Germany into a politically and administratively integrated nation-state officially occurred on 18 January 1871 at the Versailles Palace in the Hall of Mirrors in France. Princes of the German states gathered there to proclaim Wilhelm I of Prussia as German emperor after the French capitulation in the Franco-Prussian War. Unofficially, the de facto transition of most of the German-speaking populations into a federated organization of states had been developing for some time, through alliances formal and informal between princely rulers, but in fits and starts, as self-interests of parties hampered the process over nearly a century of aristocratic experimentation from the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire and the subsequent rise of nationalism over the span of the Napoleonic Wars era. Unification exposed tensions due to religious, linguistic, social, and cultural differences among the inhabitants of the new nation, suggesting that 1871 only represented one moment in a continuum of the larger unification processes. The Holy Roman Emperor had been often called Emperor of all the Germanies. Contemporary news accounts frequently referred to the Germanies, and in the empire, its members of higher nobility were referred to as Princes of Germany, or Princes of the Germanies, for the lands once called East Francia had been organized and governed as pocket kingdoms since times before the rise of Charlemagne. Given the mountainous terrains of much of the territory, it is obvious that isolated peoples would develop cultural, educational, linguistic, and religious differences over such a lengthy time period. Germany, or the Germanies, of the 19th century enjoyed transportation and communications improvements tying the peoples into a greater, tighter culture, as has the entire world under the influence of better communications and transportation infrastructures. The Holy Roman Empire of the German nation, which had included more than 500 independent states, was effectively dissolved when Emperor Francis II abdicated during the War of the Third Coalition. Despite the legal, administrative, and political disruption associated with the end of the empire, the people of the German-speaking areas of the old empire had a common linguistic, cultural, and legal tradition further enhanced by the shared experience in the French Revolutionary Wars and Napoleonic Wars. European liberalism offered an intellectual basis for unification by challenging dynastic and absolutist models of social and political organization. Its German manifestation emphasized the importance of tradition, education, and linguistic unity of peoples in a geographic region. Economically, the creation of the Prussian Zollverein in 1818, and its subsequent expansion to include other states of the German Confederation, reduced competition between and within states. Emerging modes of transportation facilitated business and recreational travel, leading to contact and sometimes conflict among German speakers from throughout Central Europe. The model of diplomatic spheres of influence resulting from the Congress of Vienna in 1814–15 after the Napoleonic Wars endorsed Austrian dominance in Central Europe. However, the negotiators at Vienna took no account of Prussia's growing strength within and among the German states and so failed to foresee that Prussia would rise up to challenge Austria for leadership. This German dualism presented two solutions to the problem of unification: Kleindeutsche Lösung, the small Germany solution, or Großdeutsche Lösung, the Greater Germany solution. Historians debate whether Otto von Bismarck, Minister-President of Prussia, had a master plan to expand the North German Confederation of 1866 to include the remaining independent German states into a single entity are simply to expand the power of the Kingdom of Prussia. They conclude that factors in addition to the strength of Bismarck's realpolitik led a collection of early modern polities to reorganize political, economic, military, and diplomatic relationships in the 19th century. Reaction to Danish and French nationalism provided foci for expressions of German unity. Military successes, especially those of Prussia in 3 regional wars, generated enthusiasm and pride that politicians could harness to promote unification. This experience echoed the memory of mutual accomplishment in the Napoleonic Wars, particularly in the War of Liberation of 1813–14. By establishing a Germany without Austria, the political and administrative unification in 1871 at least temporarily solved the problem of dualism. Brief summary of timeline. 1797, the French First Republic annexed the left bank of the Rhine as a result of the War of the First Coalition. 1802, previous annexations by France confirmed following its victory in the War of the Second Coalition. 1804, Francis I of Austria declared the new Austrian Empire as a reaction to Napoleon Bonaparte's proclamation of the First French Empire in 1804. 1806, as a result of the War of the Third Coalition, Napoleon I annexed some territories east of the Rhine, replaced the Holy Roman Empire by the Confederation of the Rhine as a French client state. 1807, Prussia lost one half of its territory following the War of the Fourth Coalition. 1815, after the defeat of Napoleon, the Congress of Vienna reinstated the Germanic states into the German Confederation under the leadership of the Austrian Empire. 1819, the Karlsbad Decrees suppressed any form of pan-Germanic activities to avoid the creation of a German state. The Kingdom of Prussia, however, initiated a customs union with other Confederation states. 1834, the Prussian-led custom union evolved into the Zollverein that included almost all Confederation states except the Austrian Empire. 1848, revolts across the German Confederation, such as in Berlin, Dresden and Frankfurt, forced King Frederick William IV of Prussia to grant a constitution to the Confederation. In the meantime, the Frankfurt Parliament was set up in 1848 and attempted to proclaim a united Germany, but this was refused by William IV. The question of a united Germany under the Klein-Deutsch solution of the so-called Gross-Deutsch began to surface. 1861–62, King Wilhelm I became King of Prussia and he appointed Otto von Bismarck on 23 September 1862, Minister-President and Foreign Minister, who favored a blood and iron policy to create a united Germany under the leadership of Prussia. 1864, the Danish-Prussian War started as Prussia protested against Danish incorporation of Schleswig into the Kingdom of Denmark. The Austrian Empire was deliberately drawn into this war by Otto von Bismarck, Chancellor of Prussia. The Austro-Prussian victory led to Schleswig, the northern part, being governed by Prussia and Holstein, the southern part, being governed by Austria as per the Treaty of Vienna. 1866, Bismarck accused the Austrian Empire of stirring up troubles in Prussian-held Schleswig. Prussian troops drove into Austrian-held Holstein and took control of the entire state of Schleswig-Holstein. Austria declared war on Prussia and, after fighting the Austro-Prussian War, was swiftly defeated. The Treaty of Prague formally dissolved the German Confederation and Prussia created the North German Confederation. Confederation to include all Germanic states, except the pro-French, southern kingdoms of Bavaria, Baden and Württemberg. 1870, when the French Emperor Napoleon III demanded territories of the Rhineland in return for his neutrality amid the Austro-Prussian War, Bismarck used the Spanish succession question and Ems telegram as an opportunity to incorporate the southern kingdoms. Napoleon III declared war against Prussia. 1871, the Franco-Prussian War ended with Prussian troops capturing Paris, the capital of the Second French Empire. Bavaria, Baden, and Württemberg were incorporated into the North German Confederation in the Treaty of Frankfurt. Bismarck then proclaimed King Wilhelm I, now Kaiser Wilhelm I, as leader of the new, united Germany. With the German troops remaining in Paris, Napoleon III dissolved the French Empire in a new republic. The Third French Republic was created under Adolf Thiers. German-speaking Central Europe in the early 19th century. Prior to 1806, German-speaking Central Europe included more than 300 political entities, most of which were part of the Holy Roman Empire and the extensive Habsburg hereditary dominions. They ranged in size from the small and complex territories of the princely Hohenlohe family branches to sizable, well-defined territories such as the kingdoms of Bavaria and Prussia. The governance varied. They included free imperial cities, also of different sizes, such as the powerful Augsburg and the minuscule Wahlstatt, ecclesiastical territories, also of varying sizes and influence, such as the wealthy Abbey of Reichenau and the powerful Archbishopric of Cologne, and dynastic states such as Württemberg. These lands made up the territory of the Holy Roman Empire, which at times included more than 1,000 entities. Since the 15th century, with few exceptions, the empire's prince-electors had chosen successive heads of the House of Habsburg to hold the title of Holy Roman Emperor. Among the German-speaking states, the Holy Roman Empire administrative and legal mechanisms provided a venue to resolve disputes between peasants and landlords, between jurisdictions, and within jurisdictions, through the organization of imperial circles. Groups of states consolidated resources and promoted regional and organizational interests, including economic cooperation and military protection. The War of the Second Coalition resulted in the defeat of the imperial and allied forces by Napoleon Bonaparte. The treaties of Lunéville and Amiens and the mediatization of 1803 transferred large portions of the Holy Roman Empire to the dynastic states and secularized ecclesiastical territories. Most of the imperial cities disappeared from the political and legal landscape, and the populations living in these territories acquired new allegiances to dukes and kings. This transfer particularly enhanced the territories of Württemberg and Baden. In 1806, after a successful invasion of Prussia and a defeat of Prussia and Russia at the joint battles of Jena-Auschwitz, Napoleon dictated the Treaty of Pressburg, in which the emperor dissolved the Holy Roman Empire. Rise of German nationalism under the Napoleonic system. Under the hegemony of the French Empire, popular German nationalism thrived in the reorganized German states, due in part to the shared experience, albeit under French dominance. Various justifications emerged to identify Germany as a single state. For the German philosopher Johann Gottlieb Fichte, the first, original, and truly natural boundaries of states are beyond doubt their internal boundaries. Those who speak the same language are joined to each other by a multitude of invisible bonds by nature herself. Long before any human art begins, they understand each other and have the power of continuing to make themselves understood more and more clearly. They belong together and are by nature one and an inseparable whole. A common language may have been seen to serve as the basis of a nation, but as contemporary historians of 19th century Germany noted, it took more than linguistic similarity to unify these several hundred polities. The experience of German-speaking Central Europe during the years of French hegemony contributed to a sense of common cause to remove the French invaders and reassert control over their own lands. The exigencies of Napoleon's campaigns in Poland, the Iberian Peninsula, Western Germany, and his disastrous invasion of Russia in 1812 disillusioned many Germans, princes and peasants alike. Napoleon's continental system nearly ruined the Central European economy. The invasion of Russia included nearly 125,000 troops from German lands, and the loss of that army encouraged many Germans, both high and low-born, to envision a Central Europe free of Napoleon's influence. The creation of such student militias as the Lutzau-Freikorps exemplified this tendency. The debacle in Russia loosened the French grip on the German princes. In 1813, Napoleon mounted a campaign in the German states to bring them back into the French orbit. The subsequent War of Liberation culminated in the Great Battle of Leipzig, also known as the Battle of Nations. In October 1813, more than 500,000 combatants engaged in ferocious fighting over 3 days, making it the largest European land battle of the 19th century. The engagement resulted in a decisive victory for the coalition of Austria, Prussia, Russia, Saxony, and Sweden, and it ended French power east of the Rhine. Success encouraged the coalition forces to pursue Napoleon across the Rhine. His army and his government collapsed, and the victorious coalition incarcerated Napoleon on Elba. During the brief Napoleonic restoration known as the 100 Days of 1815, forces of the Seventh Coalition, including an Anglo-Allied army under the command of the Duke of Wellington and a Prussian army under the command of Gebhard von Blücher, were victorious at Waterloo. The critical role played by Blücher's troops, especially after having to retreat from the field at Ligny the day before, helped to turn the tide of combat against the French. The Prussian cavalry pursued the defeated French in the evening of the 18th of June, sealing the Allied victory. For the German perspective, the actions of Blücher's troops at Waterloo and the combined efforts at Leipzig offered a rallying point of pride and enthusiasm. This interpretation became a key building block of the Russian myth expounded by the pro-Prussian nationalist historians later in the 19th century. Reorganization of Central Europe and the rise of German dualism after Napoleon's defeat. The Congress of Vienna established a new European political diplomatic system based on the balance of power. This system reorganized Europe into spheres of influence which, in some cases, suppressed the aspirations of the various nationalities, including the Germans and Italians. Generally, an enlarged Prussia and the 38 other states, consolidated from the mediatized territories of 1803, were confederated within the Austrian Empire's sphere of influence. The Congress established a loose German Confederation, headed by Austria, with a federal diet that met in the city of Frankfurt am Main, in recognition of the imperial position traditionally held by the Habsburgs. The emperors of Austria became the titular presidents of this parliament. Problematically, the built-in Austrian dominance failed to take into account Prussia's 18th-century emergence in imperial politics. Ever since the Prince-Elector of Brandenburg had made himself king in Prussia at the beginning of that century, the domains had steadily increased through war and inheritance. Prussia's consolidated strength had become especially apparent during the War of the Austrian Austrian succession and the 7 Years' War under Frederick the Great, as Maria Theresa and Joseph tried to restore Habsburg hegemony in the Holy Roman Empire. Frederick countered with the creation of the Fürstenbund in 1785. Austrian-Prussian dualism lay firmly rooted in old imperial politics. Those balance of power maneuvers were epitomized by the War of the Bavarian Succession or Potato War among common folk. Even after the end of the Holy Roman Empire, this competition influenced the growth and development of nationalist movements in the 19th century. Problems of reorganization. Despite the nomenclature of Diet, this institution should in no way be construed as a broadly, or popularly, elected group of representatives. Many of the states did not have constitutions, and those that did, such as the Duchy of Baden, based suffrage on strict property requirements which effectively limited suffrage to a small portion of the male population. Furthermore, this impractical solution did not reflect the new status of Prussia in the overall scheme. Although the Prussian army had been dramatically defeated in the 1806 Battle of Jena-Auerstedt, it had made a spectacular comeback at Waterloo. Consequently, Prussian leaders expected to play a pivotal role in German politics. The surge of German nationalism, stimulated by the experience of Germans in the Napoleonic period and initially allied with liberalism, shifted political, social, and cultural relationships within the German states. In this context, one can detect its roots in the experience of Germans in the Napoleonic period. The Burschenschaft, student organizations, and popular demonstrations, such as those held at Wartburg Castle in October 1817, contributed to a growing sense of unity among German speakers of Central Europe. Furthermore, implicit and sometimes explicit promises made during the War of Liberation engendered an expectation of popular sovereignty and widespread participation in the political process, promises that largely went unfulfilled once peace had been achieved. Agitation by student organizations led such conservative leaders as Clemens Wenzel, Prince von Metternich, to fear the rise of national sentiment. The assassination of German dramatist August von Kotzebue in March 1819 by a radical student seeking unification was followed on the 20th of September 1819 by the proclamation of the Karlsbad Decrees, which hampered intellectual leadership of the nationalist movement. Metternich was able to harness conservative outrage at the assassination to consolidate legislation that would further limit the press and constrain the rising liberal and nationalist movements. Consequently, these decrees drove the Burschenschaft and underground, restricted the publication of nationalist materials, expanded censorship of the press and private correspondence, and limited academic speech by prohibiting university professors from encouraging nationalist discussion. The decrees were the subject of Johann Joseph von Gose's pamphlet Deutschland und die Revolution, in which he concluded that it was both impossible and undesirable to repress the free utterance of public opinion by reactionary measures.